Good morning, dev builders. A conversation came up yesterday about testing and how we test our apps, whether we test our apps, that kind of thing. And it was interesting timing because I was just coincidentally looking at something called the Playwright MCP server. So I thought I'd share that here because I think it might spark some interesting conversations and ideas about how to test in this era of AI everything. So the Superbase MCP server essentially makes it possible from something like Copilot to run all these different tools. So, for example, essentially automating the browser. So going to a web page, interacting with elements on that web page, taking snapshots, that kind of thing. So Playwright, if you haven't used it, is really good for that. You can write Playwright tests, which then do all those things and then tell you, and you can do asserts and verify that the kind of page is in the state you expect it to be. But it's interesting now because we can do all that through chat. So I'm just going to try it with this page. I have run into a few little bugs. I think it might be to do with the version of Visual Studio Code I'm using, but let's just see how we go. So this is the web page I want to test. Really simple, submit reviews via a form. So if I just paste that URL in and say, please use the Playwright MCP server to test this page. Fill the form in using as many different ways as you can think of, different ways that you might break the form, check for validation. We want to check how this form is performing, whether there are any security concerns that we need to deal with. Please produce a report when you're finished and then stop. Let's see, because I have had some issues. Okay, so it's going to try empty fields, some fields filled in, out of range values, client-side and server-side validation, breaking the form or bypassing validation. Okay, so those are pretty good. What we could have done, of course, is ask it to come up with a plan first that we could have signed off and then told it to execute that plan. So that's another way of doing this. This is really good, actually, because sometimes, even if you're an experienced developer, you've got blind spots. So asking it to come up with a test plan that you then kind of sign off is quite a good technique anyway. But obviously the next level now is being able to use Playwright through the MCP server to just automate those tests. So this is quite good, I think. Oh, wow, look at that. It's doing all sorts to try and break this. Probably things I wouldn't have thought of, interestingly. There's one there where it fell over, so that'll be interesting just to have a quick look at. Why did that one? Okay, so it was trying to find a specific input and couldn't type it in for some reason. That might be a glitch, I think. But here you go. So this is the results of our testing. So tried an empty submission, tried a partial submission. It tried to basically violate security here, but it seems like that didn't do anything untoward. This is the big thing though, there's no user feedback. So it turns out we haven't really got any validation. It just doesn't add a review. If you enter invalid data, it just doesn't add the review. And the rating field allows direct typing, so users can enter. So we're missing validation, I think, is the key. Something I've done in another project, which I won't just do here, is actually once I've got to this, I've then asked, Copilot to actually implement validation, and it did a pretty good job of it. And I said, use data annotations because this is a Blazor app, and it did that. So that would be the next step. But yeah, there you go. And there's one last thing, just because you might think, well, this is great, but it's non-deterministic. If I run this again, I might get different results. So what might be worth doing is seeing if this can generate the Playwright tests for us. So let's just see. Please generate the Playwright test specs for these scenarios. Yeah, I was just checking while I was doing. You see here, it's got this tool, generate Playwright tests. So that feels like it should work. And lo and behold, let's just quickly run through this. So this looks pretty good. So it's getting a button, submit review. It's checking a few things. It's filling in values here. Look, this bit here kind of says fill in the value test user. It's got our negative testing. Okay, Now, I'm not actually set up to run Playwright in this project, funnily enough, but should I have that all configured, these tests would now run, and that would give me, so what I've kind of done there is go from the non-deterministic, let AI kind of figure out how to test this, run some tests, see how it works, to a more deterministic, here, like I'm happy with those tests, now codify those as actual tests. And obviously those tests can now be run as part of continuous integration or deployment, or however it is that you run tests. So there you go. Playwright MCP, I think is really interesting. It's interesting too, just lastly, because this will do browser automation, not just for testing. So to give you a really random example, I tried it yesterday and I was like, oh, please go to Google and search for Blazor and give me a report of the top 10 people or blogs that are talking about Blazor. I chucked the results in the bin because it didn't list mine, so we'll just gloss over that. But it did that, and it gave me a report, and then I asked it questions about the kind of subjects that are being covered. So as a tool for just automating the browser, it's also good. But I think for testing as a developer, it could be really quite powerful. So hit reply in the comments, let us know what you think. And yeah, I'm really interested, how might you use the Playwright MCP server in your development workflow?